The parade ground fell silent in a way that only catastrophe can achieve. 1,200 boots stood frozen in perfect formation. 1,200 pairs of eyes locked on a scene that would shatter, careers rewrite regulations, and become legend whispered in barracks for decades to come. At the center of it all, Admiral Victor Hartwell lay unconscious on the ceremonial grass, his dress whites stained with Virginia clay, his cover rolling slowly toward the color guard like a severed crown seeking its fallen king. Captain Kira Ashford stood over him, hands clasped behind her back, spine straight as a rifle barrel. Her right knuckles throbbed where they had connected with his jaw. Her left cheek burned where his palm had cracked across her face 30 seconds earlier. But her voice when it came carried across that stunned silence with the clarity of a final radio transmission. "I will accept the consequences." No one moved. No one breathed. History had just fractured and every witness knew it. But this moment, this precise convergence of honor and violence, had been building for 21 years. It started 4,000 miles away, in a city that would teach an 11-year-old girl what sacrifice truly meant. Fallujah, Iraq, November 2004. The television glowed blue in the darkened living room of a small house in Norfolk, Virginia. Kira Ashford sat cross-legged on the carpet, homework forgotten, watching footage of Marines moving through devastated streets half a world away. Dust hung in the air like fog on that distant screen. Gunfire crackled through tinny speakers. Buildings reduced to skeletons of concrete and rebar-lined roads that looked like the surface of some alien planet where everything beautiful had been systematically destroyed. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel twisted in her hands, face pale as bone. She had been standing there for 20 minutes watching her daughter watch the war, unable to find words that would make any of this easier. The doorbell rang at 1900 hours exactly. Kira would remember that precision forever. The military did not do coincidence. Doorbells at 7 in the evening meant one thing and one thing only. Two Marines stood on the porch in dress blues. The older one, a captain with gray at his temples and ribbons that told stories of places most Americans would never see, held a folded flag against his chest. 13 folds, 50 stars, the physical weight of a life compressed into cotton and symbolism. The younger Marine gripped a manila envelope like it might dissolve in his hands. Neither man looked at Kira. They focused on her mother with the terrible compassion of messengers who had delivered this news before and would deliver it again. "Mrs. Ashford." The captain's voice was steady, practiced gentle in the way only those who have seen death can be gentle. "The Commandant of the Marine Corps has entrusted me to express his deep regret that your husband, Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford, was killed in action in Al-Anbar Province, Iraq, on November 12, 2004. The words blurred together after that, official phrases designed to contain the uncontainable. Honorable service, combat operations, hostile action. The language of bureaucracy trying desperately to give shape to the shapeless reality of a man who would never walk through that door again. The flag passed from the captain's hands to her mother's trembling fingers. Her mother collapsed into a chair, the flag clutched against her chest like she could somehow hold on to the man it represented. Like if she squeezed hard enough, he might materialize from the fabric in stars. The younger Marine reached out, steadied her shoulder. His face was young, maybe 23, but his eyes were decades older. War did that to people. It aged them in ways that had nothing to do with time. The captain knelt down eye level with Kira. His voice dropped to something almost gentle, almost human beneath all that military bearing. "Your father was the finest Marine I ever served with. When the convoy got ambushed, when everything went sideways, he took position on a rooftop with nothing but an M14 in his training. He held off enemy fire for 40 minutes while his brothers got to safety. 12 men are alive today because of what he did up there." Kira nodded, though she did not fully understand. Not really, not yet. She was 11 years old, and the concept of her father being gone forever was too enormous to fit inside her mind. "He never broke," the captain continued. "Never ran, even when he could have. Even when retreat would have been the smart choice. You understand what that means?" She nodded again, because that was what seemed expected of her. "He asked me to tell you something, if anything ever happened." The captain's jaw worked, muscle tensing beneath weathered skin. He said to tell you, hold steady, breathe, squeeze. He said you would understand. She did understand. Those 3 words. The fundamentals her father had taught her during their weekend trips to the range back when she was 8 years old, and the rifle was almost as tall as her entire body. Shooting was not about strength, he had explained while positioning her small hands on the stock. It was about control, patience, breath, discipline. The rifle did not care if you were scared or confident. Physics did not care about your emotions. The only thing that mattered was execution. Hold steady. Keep your position no matter what chaos surrounds you. Breathe. Control your body. Control your fear. Control your heart rate. Squeeze. When the moment comes, act with precision and commitment. The captain stood, rendered a salute so sharp it could have drawn blood, and walked back into the November night. The door closed with a sound that seemed far too quiet for a moment so permanent. The house filled with the sound of her mother's weeping. Deep, broken sobs that seemed to come from somewhere below the floor, below the foundation, below everything solid in the world. Kira walked upstairs to her room, closed the door, sat on the edge of her bed in the darkness. The Purple Heart ceremony would come later. The burial at Arlington with full honors. The 21-gun salute that would echo off headstones like the world ending in intervals. But in that moment alone in the darkness of her childhood bedroom, 11-year-old Kira Ashford made a promise to a ghost 4,000 miles away. She would finish what he started. She would become the Marine he had been, and she would never cry again. Marine Corps Base, Quantico, Virginia. 21 years later. Kira Ashford kept promises. The rifle lay across her cleaning mat in perfect geometry, disassembled down to springs and firing pins. An M40A5 sniper system, 42 inches of precision engineering that had become an extension of her body over years of deployment. Weight 16.5 pounds with scope, effective range 1,000 meters, maximum range in the right hands under the right conditions, with the right breathing and the cold mathematics of ballistics aligned like prayer considerably farther. Kira's hands moved through the cleaning ritual with the unconscious grace of 10,000 repetitions. Carbon scraper along the bolt face, removing microscopic residue that could affect accuracy at extreme distances. Bore snake through the barrel, smooth and patient. CLP oil applied in exact measures, each component inspected, judged, approved. The Schmidt and Bender PM2 scope got special attention. Glass this pure demanded respect. A single smudge, a single speck of dust could mean the difference between a clean kill and a missed shot. A missed shot could mean dead Americans. Around her, the armory buzzed with the controlled chaos of a scout sniper platoon preparing for inspection. Younger Marines cleaned their weapons with varying degrees of competence. A corporal struggled with a stuck ejector pin, his frustration visible in the tension of his shoulders. A lance corporal had reassembled his rifle upside down and had not noticed yet. Kira watched them peripherally, cataloging mistakes, planning corrections. Leadership meant catching failures before they became casualties. Captain Ashford, she glanced up. Lieutenant Garrett Holden stood at attention, dress uniform, immaculate expression, carefully neutral. 26 years old, Naval Academy graduate, 3 years in the fleet and still young enough to believe regulations mattered more than results. He would learn. They all did eventually. At ease, Lieutenant. What do you need? Holden shifted weight from one foot to the other. Uncomfortable. That was a bad sign. Holden was usually unflappable. Ma'am, you've been requested for special assignment, ceremonial detail, Medal of Honor ceremony 3 days from now at Norfolk Naval Station. Kira's hand stilled on the rifle. Ceremonial duty. She ran a scout sniper platoon. They trained for combat operations, not parade drills. I run combat operations, Holden. We don't polish brass and march in formation. Yes, ma'am, I understand. He hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything she needed to know about what was coming next. The request came from Admiral Hartwell's office. Specifically, he asked for you by name. The name hit like a punch to the solar plexus. Kira kept her face blank, years of discipline locking down any visible reaction, but her pulse spiked hard enough that she could feel it in her temples. Admiral Victor Hartwell. Surface Warfare Commander. 30 years of service. Navy Cross recipient for heroism in the Persian Gulf, and the man who had ended her sniper career 2 years ago with a stroke of his pen and a carefully constructed lie. Did the Admiral provide justification for this request? Holden's jaw tightened. He knew the history. Everyone in the chain of command knew. The whispers had followed Kira from Afghanistan to Quantico like a shadow she could not shake. No, ma'am. Just said he needed experienced leadership for the color guard. High-profile event, press coverage, distinguished guests. Kira returned her attention to the rifle, threading the barrel back into the receiver with absolute precision. Click, seated, locked. The familiar mechanical sounds were grounding a reminder that some things in the world still operated according to predictable rules. Tell the Admiral's office I'll be honored to serve. Ma'am. Holden hesitated again, and that second hesitation was unusual for him. Sergeant Major Creed asked me to relay a message. He said, and I quote, "This smells like an ambush. Ambushes only work if you walk into them blind." Kira allowed herself a thin smile. Dalton Creed had survived more ambushes than most Marines had survived training exercises. If he smelled trouble, trouble was definitely coming. Tell Creed I appreciate his concern. Tell him I'm walking in with both eyes open. She lifted the completed rifle sighted down the barrel toward the far wall, checking alignment. Perfect, like always. Dismissed, Lieutenant. Holden saluted, turned on his heel, and walked away. The armory door closed with a metallic clang that echoed longer than it should have in the sudden quiet. Kira set down the rifle and opened her footlocker. Beneath folded uniforms and field manuals sat a small wooden box, scarred and water-stained from years of deployment. She lifted the lid with the careful reverence the contents deserved. Inside, resting on faded velvet, lay her father's Purple Heart. The bronze profile of George Washington caught the fluorescent light gleaming with the dull permanence of something meant to outlast generations. The ribbon's purple and white edges had dulled with age, softened by 21 years of careful handling. Beside it, wrapped in cloth, sat his dog tags. Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford, USMC. Blood type O positive. Protestant. The metal still bore scratches from years of combat training life, compressed into stamped steel. She lifted the tags, let them dangle from her fingers. The chain was too short for her neck now. She wore her own tags in the field. But sometimes, late at night when the barracks fell silent and sleep refused to come, she held these and remembered a man who had taught her to shoot straight, speak truth, and never surrender ground that mattered. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. You taught me well, Dad, she whispered to the empty armory. Let's see if it's enough. The senior enlisted quarters sat at the far end of base where the trees grew thick and the buildings carried the weight of decades. Sergeant Major Dalton, Ironside Creed, lived in a small apartment that smelled of gun oil, coffee, and old leather. He had turned 67 last month. Retirement loomed like a storm front on the horizon, inevitable and unwelcome. But you did not survive Desert Storm Somalia in 3 decades of Marine Corps politics without developing instincts that bordered on supernatural. Those instincts were screaming now. Kira knocked twice, entered at his gruff, "Come." She found him at his kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and photographs, reading glasses perched crooked on his weathered face. Gray stubble covered his jaw, the kind of stubble that accumulated when sleep became optional and worry became constant. He looked up, gestured at the chair across from him. "Coffee, please." He poured from a pot that had been burning since 0500. The coffee tasted like battery acid and determination. Perfect. Kira sipped, waited. Creed never wasted words. When he had something to say, he said it. When he did not, he let silence do the talking. "You know why Hartwell wants you at Norfolk?" "Not a question." "Because I saw him meeting with defense contractors in Afghanistan. Because I filed a report. Because he buried me for it." Creed tapped one of the photographs spread across his table. It showed a younger Hartwell, maybe 40 years old, standing on the deck of a warship. Smoke rose in the background. His uniform was scorched face, streaked with soot eyes, fierce with the kind of intensity that came from staring down death and spitting in its face. USS Princeton, February 1991, Persian Gulf War. Iraqi mine punched through the hull, flooded 3 compartments in minutes. Hartwell was a damage control officer. He manually sealed the bulkhead while water rose to his chest. Saved 40 sailors who would have drowned otherwise. They gave him the Navy Cross. I know the story, Kira said quietly. Read about it when I was 12. Wanted to be like him. Yeah. Creed pulled another photograph from the pile. This one showed an older Hartwell Grayer, Harder standing beside a young officer in marine dress blues. The family resemblance was unmistakable. Same jaw, same eyes, same rigid posture that spoke of pride and expectation. That's his son, Lieutenant Daniel Hartwell, died in 2009, training accident at Quantico. Kira's stomach went cold. I didn't know that. Not many do. Hartwell buried it deep, pulled strings to keep it out of the press, used every favor he had accumulated in 20 years of service to make sure the details stayed classified. Creed's voice dropped. Female sniper trainee misidentified a target on a live fire range. Sent a round through Daniel's chest instead of the practice dummy downrange. Kid bled out before the medevac arrived. 24 years old, only child. The weight of that revelation settled over Kira like a physical force. She had been at Quantico in 2009 early in her training. She had heard rumors about an accident, whispers in the barracks that faded whenever instructors approached. But the details had been classified, locked away. Something broke in Hartwell after that, Creed continued. Started seeing threats everywhere women served in combat roles. Filed complaints, blocked promotions, made life hell for every female officer who crossed his path. He met Kira's eyes and his gaze was hard with the weight of knowledge he wished he did not possess. You're not the first career he's destroyed. You're the seventh. 7 women, 7 careers, 7 lives derailed because one man could not separate his grief from his duty. 2 years ago, you were his intelligence officer in Afghanistan. Top marks, commendations, slated for promotion to major. Then you witnessed something you shouldn't have. He was meeting with contractors from Titan Defense Systems. Late at night, off the books. The memory surfaced with painful clarity. I was running route analysis for the next day's patrol, saw them through the command tent flap. They handed him an envelope. Thick. He didn't report it through channels. Didn't log it. Just slipped it into his personal effects. And you filed a report through proper channels, like a good Marine. Yes, Sergeant Major. And 3 weeks later, you were transferred stateside. Your sniper specialty reclassified. Your promotion packet disappeared into administrative hell. Career trajectory that was pointing straight up suddenly went sideways and never recovered. Kira set down her coffee cup, stared at the scarred wooden table. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were. Creed's voice hardened with conviction. That's why you're dangerous to him. That's why he's coming for you now. He gathered the photographs, slid them back into a folder with the practiced care of a man who had assembled evidence before. I served with your father in Mogadishu, October 1993, Black Hawk down. Things went sideways fast. We were pinned down in a building, ammunition running low, insurgents closing from 3 directions. Dominic took position on a rooftop with an M14, started picking them off one by one. Bought us time to extract. He saved my life and 12 others that day. Creed stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a bottle of bourbon that probably cost more than a month's pay. He poured 2 fingers into 2 glasses, handed one to Kira. Your father told me something that night after we got back to base, after the adrenaline faded and we could finally breathe again. He said, Creed, the hardest thing about being a Marine isn't the fighting. It's knowing when to fight, even when every regulation and every superior officer is telling you to stand down. He raised his glass. He lived that code, died for it in Fallujah. You've got his blood, his instincts, his stubborn refusal to run from a fight that matters. Kira drank the bourbon. It burned clean and righteous down her throat, warming something that had been cold for a very long time. So I'm going to tell you what I see coming, Creed said, and then you're going to make your own choice. I'm listening. Hartwell didn't request you for ceremonial duty because he needs a good Marine. He requested you because he wants to destroy you. Publicly. Permanently. Creed leaned forward, his weathered face grave. This Medal of Honor ceremony is high profile. Press coverage, senior leadership attendance, camera crews from every major network. He's going to do something that ends your career in front of witnesses, and there won't be a damn thing you can do about it without looking insubordinate. So what do you recommend? Refuse the assignment, claim a medical issue, family emergency, anything. He met her eyes. Run, survive, fight another day when the ground is more favorable. Kira set down the empty glass, met his eyes with the same steel her father had carried to that rooftop in Fallujah 21 years ago. My father didn't run from a rooftop when he could have. 12 men are alive because he stayed. I won't run from a parade ground in Norfolk because a broken admiral wants revenge for something I didn't do. Creed studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, something like pride flickered across his weathered face. Yeah, that's what I figured you'd say. Just like Dominic. Same eyes, same stubbornness, same willingness to stand in front of the storm. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small notebook, scribbled something, tore out the page. This is the private number for a JAG officer. Colonel named Patterson. Good man. Owes me from way back. If things go sideways at Norfolk, you call him immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to handle it yourself. You get to a phone and you call this number. Kira took the paper, folded it carefully, slipped it into her breast pocket next to her heart. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Don't thank me yet. His voice roughened with emotion he rarely showed. Just promise me one thing. Sir, whatever happens out there, you remember who you are. You're Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford's daughter. You're a Marine Scout sniper with 47 confirmed kills and a combat record that would make most men weep with envy. You've earned every inch of ground you stand on. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 30 years of friendship with a dead man. Don't let some broken-down admiral with an axe to grind take that from you. Don't let him win. And don't you dare dishonor your father's memory by backing down from a fight that matters. I won't. Good. He walked her to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. That shot you made in Helmand Province, the one at 1,847 yards, the one that took out the Taliban commander and saved that army convoy. Kira's pulse kicked up. She had never discussed that shot outside of classified debriefs. The mission was buried so deep in the intelligence archives that even mentioning it could trigger security protocols. How do you know about that? Because I still have friends in high places, friends who know what really happens in places the news never covers. And because that shot is the best piece of long-range marksmanship I've seen documented in 40 years of service. His eyes glittered with something between admiration and warning. The ballistics alone were impossible. Wind elevation, target movement, no spotter backup. You did what the mathematics said couldn't be done. He smiled cold and sharp, the smile of a man who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. Hartwell knows about it too. Read your classified file. Pulled strings to get access to things he had no business seeing. That's what really scares him. Not that you're a woman, that you're better than any man under his command ever was, that you're living proof that everything he believes is wrong. The door closed behind her. Kira stood in the hallway for a long moment, processing everything Creed had told her. The shot at 1,847 yards. She had tried to forget it, tried to file it away with all the other moments of violence that accumulated in a combat career. But her body remembered what her mind wanted to forget. The way her heart had slowed to almost nothing. The way time had compressed until seconds felt like hours. The way the crosshairs had settled on a moving target through heat shimmer and dust, and the pure calculated faith that physics would not betray her if she did not betray physics. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. She had killed a man from over a mile away with one bullet. And because of that bullet, 11 American soldiers had gone home to their families instead of coming home in flag-draped boxes. If Admiral Hartwell wanted to destroy her for being competent, for being capable, for being everything he feared, let him try. She had faced worse odds on that Afghan ridgeline. She had held her breath while a bullet flew for 3.2 seconds across a distance that should have been impossible. A parade ground in Norfolk was nothing compared to that. The next 48 hours blurred together in a controlled rush of preparation. Uniform inspections, manual of arms drills with M1 Garand, ceremonial rifles, wood and steel from another war, another generation polished until they gleamed like promises kept. The weight felt different from her M40A5, heavier in some ways, lighter in others, less familiar. But the fundamentals remained the same. balance, breathing, precision. Lieutenant Holden ran the platoon through synchronized movements until every step landed in unison. Every rifle movement cut the air at identical angles. The younger Marines struggled with the archaic 8-count manual of arms. Too many years with modern weapons, modular systems, practical warfare. Ceremony felt foreign to them. Kira walked the ranks making corrections. A lance corporal's grip too tight on the barrel. A corporal's shoulder angle off by 3 degrees. A private's footwork slightly out of sync with the count. Small failures. The kind that would compound into visible sloppiness under the eyes of cameras and generals. She adjusted grips, straightened spines, reminded them that ceremony was not about nostalgia or outdated tradition. "Why do we use these old rifles, ma'am?" The question came from a 19-year-old private named Beckett Shaw. Corn-fed kid from Nebraska with a natural aptitude for marksmanship and a genuine curiosity that had not yet been beaten out of him by the system. Kira lifted her own M1 Garand, felt its weight settle into her hands. "Because the men who carried these into Normandy, Iwo Jima, the Chosin Reservoir they bled for ground, we take for granted. They stormed beaches under machine gun fire. They froze in Korean mountains while Chinese human waves crashed against their lines. They held positions that couldn't be held and died in places whose names most Americans have never heard." She met his eyes. "Using their weapons in ceremony honors that sacrifice. It says we remember. We carry what they carried, even if just symbolically. It says their weight is our weight now. Their duty continues through us." Shaw nodded slowly. "I understand, ma'am." "Good. Now fix your thumb position before you give yourself grand thumb when that bolt slams home. Trust me, it hurts worse than anything the enemy can do to you." Shaw adjusted his grip quickly, wisely. The drills continued hour after hour. The Marines grew sharper. Their movements synchronized until the platoon moved as one organism. The rifles became extensions of their bodies rather than awkward props. By the second evening, they looked like something their great-grandfathers would recognize. Warriors who understood that performance mattered, that eyes were watching, that history judged the living by how well they honored the dead. Kira called halt at 1900 hours, dismissed them to evening chow. Holden lingered, rifle still at port arms, sweat darkening his collar, despite the cool Virginia evening. "Ma'am, can I speak freely?" "Always, Lieutenant." "The men are talking, rumors about why Admiral Hartwell specifically requested you, about your time in Afghanistan, about," he hesitated, choosing words carefully, "about him having it out for you." Kira began disassembling her Garand, methodical, calm. "And what do you think, Lieutenant? I think you're the best officer I've ever served under. I think you know more about tactical operations, marksmanship, and leadership than most people learn in 20 years of service. I think if Admiral Hartwell has a problem with you, it says more about him than it does about you." He paused. "But I also think he's a flag officer with enormous institutional power, and you're a captain with a target on your back. Those aren't good odds." "Accurate assessment." She set down the rifle components, gave him her full attention. "So what would you do if you were me?" Holden considered that carefully. He was not stupid, just young, and youth sometimes saw clearly what experience clouded with complication. "I'd be smart, politically careful, keep my head down, execute the mission flawlessly, give him no ammunition to use against me. Spoken like an officer who wants to make major someday." She did not mean it cruelly. But sometimes, Lieutenant, the mission isn't about safety. It's about standing your ground when everyone is telling you to retreat. My father taught me that. Died proving it on a rooftop in Fallujah when he could have run and no one would have blamed him. She met his eyes. "I won't dishonor his memory by running from a bully with stars on his collar. Even if it costs me everything. Even if it costs you your career. Especially then." She smiled thin and cold. "Dismiss, Lieutenant. Get some rest. Big day coming." He saluted. Left. The armory fell quiet. Kira finished cleaning the Garand, reassembled it, racked it with the others. Then she pulled out her personal weapon, the M40A5, that had been her constant companion through 3 deployments, 47 confirmed kills, and 1 impossible shot that had changed everything. She did not clean it. It was already perfect. She just held it, felt its weight, remembered. That night alone in her quarters, Kira could not sleep. She lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What would Hartwell do? How would he attack? What angle would he use to destroy her without making himself look like the aggressor? The man was many things: bitter, vengeful, corrupted by grief and power. But he was not stupid. He had survived 30 years in a system that ate the careless. He would not move against her openly, not in a way that could be easily documented or countered. He would be subtle, surgical. He would find her weakness and exploit it in front of cameras, in front of brass, in front of the world. And she had to let him. Because responding to provocation, even justified provocation, would prove every prejudice he held. The hysterical woman, the emotional female who could not handle pressure, the diversity hire who cracked when the real test came. She would have to stand there and take whatever he threw at her, absorb it, endure it, hold steady. At 0300, she gave up on sleep, sat up in the darkness, pulled out the wooden box that held her father's medals and tags. The Purple Heart caught moonlight through the window, bronze gleaming like a promise made in blood and kept in memory. "I don't know if I can do this, Dad," she whispered into the darkness. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to stand there and take it without fighting back." The silence offered no answers. The dead never did. But somewhere in that silence she heard an echo. A voice from 24 years ago teaching an 8-year-old girl to shoot on a sunny afternoon at the base range. The rifle doesn't know you're scared, Kira. It doesn't care. Physics doesn't care. The only thing that matters is whether you execute the fundamentals. Hold steady, breathe, squeeze. Do those 3 things right and the bullet goes where you point it. Every single time. But what if I miss? Then you breathe again. You squeeze again. You keep shooting until the threat is down or your ammunition is gone. You never quit. You never surrender. You never give up ground that matters. Ground that matters. Kira closed the box, set it aside, stood in the darkness of her quarters, and made a decision. Admiral Victor Hartwell wanted to destroy her. Fine. Let him try. She had survived Afghanistan. She had made shots that defied physics. She had held positions under fire when smarter people would have run. Norfolk was just another battlefield. The weapons were words instead of bullets, cameras instead of rifles, reputation instead of blood. But the fundamentals were the same. Hold steady. Keep your position no matter what chaos surrounds you. Breathe. Control your body, your fear, your heart rate, your reactions. Squeeze. When the moment comes, act with precision and commitment. She would walk into that ceremony with her head high and her spine straight. She would give Hartwell nothing, no reaction, no weakness, no opening. And if he pushed too hard, if he crossed lines that could not be uncrossed, she would deal with that too. Whatever the consequences. Dawn broke gray and cold over Quantico. Kira stood at her window, watching the sun climb, through layers of cloud, painting the base in shades of steel and shadow. In a few hours, she would board transport to Norfolk. In a day, she would face Admiral Hartwell on ground of his choosing. She had done everything she could to prepare. Trained her Marines, reviewed protocols, steeled herself mentally for whatever provocation might come. Now there was only one thing left to do. She opened her footlocker one final time, lifted her father's Purple Heart from its velvet bed, held it in her palm, feeling the weight of it, the history, the sacrifice compressed into that small disc of bronze. "I'm going now, Dad," she said quietly. "Walking into something I might not walk out of. Not the way you did not with bullets and blood, but maybe just as dangerous in its own way." She closed her fingers around the metal. "I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll still have a career when this is over. But I know one thing." Her voice steadied. "I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to let him win just because he has more stars on his collar than I do." She placed the metal back in its box, closed the lid. "Hold steady, breathe, squeeze." She pulled on her dress blues, checked herself in the mirror one final time. Everything perfect. Every ribbon aligned. Every crease sharp enough to cut. Captain Kira Ashford, United States Marine Corps. Scout sniper, daughter of a hero. Ready. The door closed behind her. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway with the steady rhythm of a woman walking toward whatever fate had in store. And somewhere in whatever place heroes go when their watch is finally done, Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford watched his daughter walk toward the fight he had always known would come. She had his eyes, his stubbornness, his absolute refusal to surrender ground that mattered. She would need all of it. The battle was just beginning. Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 2018, the heat rose in waves that bent light and made distances lie. Kira lay prone in a depression of rock and sand, her body pressed so flat against the earth that she had become part of it. The ghillie suit blended her silhouette into the landscape, transforming her into nothing more than another shadow among thousands. Her rifle rested on a low bipod scope, dialed to maximum magnification, eye pressed to glass that cost more than most cars. Beside her, Corporal Danny Reeves lay equally still, spotting scope trained on the village 1,700 meters downrange. They had been in position for 36 hours. Water gone since yesterday, food a distant memory, radio check-ins every 4 hours to confirm they were still breathing. The sun beat down with the intensity of a physical assault. 112 degrees in the shade, except there was no shade. Just rock and sand, and the patient certainty that somewhere in that distant village, a man was planning to kill Americans. Movement! Reeves kept his voice barely above a whisper. Eastern edge of the village. White robes. Positive identification on target. Kira shifted her scope fractionally. Found him. Commander Nasir Ahmad. Taliban leadership. Responsible for 14 American deaths in the past 6 months alone. IEDs planted with surgical precision along convoy routes. Ambushes coordinated through networks that seemed to know exactly when and where coalition forces would move. The intelligence had taken months to develop. Human sources, signal intercepts, pattern analysis. All of it pointing to this man in this village on this day. And now he stood in her crosshairs, small as a thumbnail at this distance, completely unaware that death watched him through German glass. Ghost 6, this is Overlord. The radio crackled in her earpiece. Convoy moving through the valley. 3 clicks north of your position. 11 vehicles. Ambush likely. Intel confirms target is coordinating attack personally. High-value target. You are cleared hot. 11 vehicles. 11 crews. Maybe 40 American soldiers driving through a valley where death waited in the rocks. Copy Overlord. Engaging. Reeves consulted his data book numbers scratched in pencil on weathered pages. Range 1847 yards. Wind 8 miles per hour variable coming from 11 o'clock. Temperature 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure 29.8 inches. Target elevation approximately 60 feet above your position. He paused, looked at her with eyes that held more doubt than hope. And he's moving. Through her scope, Kira watched Commander Ahmad walk between buildings with the casual confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. AK-47 slung over his shoulder, radio in hand, coordinating the ambush that would kill Americans in minutes if she did not stop him. At this distance, he was barely human, just a shape, a target, a mathematical problem waiting to be solved. You can't make this shot. Reeves did not say it with doubt, just mathematics. Cold calculation of variables that did not add up to success. Cold bore, no warm-up shots, moving target, distance outside any training parameter we've ever practiced. The variables are too unstable. Kira did not respond. She was already calculating. Distance 1,847 yards. Over a mile of air between her muzzle and her target. Wind value 8 miles per hour from 11 o'clock, requiring compensation of 2.1. Milliradians right. Elevation adjustment 60 feet up, adding another 6.3 milliradians to the calculation. Target movement approximately 2 miles per hour. Walking speed requiring a lead of 3.7 milliradians to intercept his position 3.2 seconds in the future. Barometric pressure slightly low, reducing bullet velocity, adding perhaps another 2 milliradians to elevation. Temperature high, expanding the air, increasing bullet drop beyond standard tables. Coriolis effect at this latitude minimal but real. Another variable in an equation already crowded with variables. She began dialing her scope. Click, click, click. Each adjustment a prayer and a promise. Each click bringing the crosshairs closer to an intersection point, that existed only in mathematics, a spot in empty air, where a bullet and a human skull would meet in 3.2 seconds. Call the wind. Her voice came out flat, professional, empty of everything except focus. Reeves swallowed hard, put his eye back to the spotting scope. Wind 8 miles per hour, 11 o'clock. Steady for now. Target moving left to right, approximately 2 miles per hour walking speed. You'll need to lead him by 3.5 miles, maybe 4. Commander Ahmad stopped walking, turned, faced her direction, though he could not possibly see her at this distance, could not possibly know that death watched him through precision glass from over a mile away. He pulled out his radio, started speaking, giving orders, coordinating the ambush that would kill 11 American soldiers in approximately 3 minutes if she did not pull this trigger. Kira settled the crosshairs. The commander's chest filled her reticle, small and distant and utterly unaware. She shifted slightly, leading his position by 3.5 milliradians, trusting instinct and mathematics in equal measure. Her father's voice echoed from 24 years ago. Hold steady. Her pulse began to slow. 60 beats per minute. 50, 45, 40. The world contracted to the space between heartbeats, the narrow tunnel of her scope. The cold certainty that physics would not betray her if she did not betray physics. Breathe. 4 counts in. The rifle rose fractionally with her chest. Hold. 4 counts out. The rifle settled. Hold. She and the weapon breathed together, one organism, one purpose, one mathematical certainty, waiting to be expressed in copper and lead. Squeeze. Her finger tightened on the trigger, not pulling, not jerking, squeezing with the patient pressure her father had taught her on a sunny afternoon at the base range when she was 8 years old and the world was still simple. The trigger broke clean. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder. The sound cracked across the desert like judgment pronounced from on high. 3.2 seconds of flight time. Kira watched through her scope, perfectly still, as the bullet traced an arc invisible to the naked eye. Rising, falling, drifting in the wind. Mathematical and inevitable. A messenger of death crossing a distance that should have been impossible. Commander Nasir Ahmad's chest exploded. Red mist. The universal signal that a bullet had found its home in human flesh. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings crumpling to the dirt in a heap of white robes and ended ambitions. Confirmed kill. Reeves breathed the words like a man witnessing a miracle. Target down. Convoy is calling in. Ambush aborted. Insurgents are scattering. Through her scope, Kira watched chaos erupt in the village. Men running, weapons being grabbed, panic spreading like fire through dry brush. They had no idea where the shot had come from. At this distance, the sound would have arrived after the bullet, after their commander was already dead. Ghost 6. Actual confirm 1 hostile KIA. Threat neutralized. Convoy is clear to proceed. Copy that, Ghost 6. Outstanding work. That's 47 confirmed kills. You just saved 11 American lives. 47. The number settled into her consciousness like a stone dropping into still water. 47 human beings she had killed since her first deployment. 47 souls separated from their bodies by her training, her skill, her willingness to do what others could not or would not do. Later, after the exfiltration, after the debrief, after her hands finally stopped shaking from the adrenaline crash, the battalion commander pulled her aside. That shot will never go in any public record. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Too sensitive, too classified. But I want you to know something. He met her eyes. I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen the best snipers in the world. What you did today was impossible. Mathematically, physically, by every training standard we have. Impossible. Kira said nothing. So how did you make it? She thought about her father on a rooftop in Fallujah, holding ground against impossible odds because that was what Marines did. She thought about promises made to ghosts and the difference between what regulations said and what honor demanded. I held steady, sir. I breathed. I squeezed. The commander nodded slowly. Your father would be proud. Maybe, but Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford was 17 years dead, sleeping beneath Arlington marble beyond pride or disappointment, or anything except the silence that followed heroism. Kira never spoke about the shot again, until Admiral Victor Hartwell read her classified file and decided to use it against her. Norfolk Naval Station. The morning of the ceremony. Kira arrived at 0500 hours, 3 hours before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The parade ground stretched empty in the pre-dawn darkness, spotlights casting long shadows across manicured grass. Bleachers rose in tiers along one side, enough seating for 1,000 spectators. A stage stood at the far end, draped in red, white, and blue bunting, flags positioned with geometric precision. Camera crews were already setting up. Tripods and cables and satellite trucks. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. This was going to be broadcast, recorded, immortalized in digital form for anyone who cared to watch. She walked the perimeter, slowly checking sightlines, exits, potential problems. Old habits from tactical planning. Know the ground. Understand the terrain. Identify where threats might emerge. Lieutenant Holden found her near the color guard staging area, both of them too wired to sleep, too disciplined to show it. Marines are assembling now, ma'am. Uniforms inspected, rifles checked. We're ready. Good. She adjusted her own dress blues, making sure every ribbon sat perfectly aligned. Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, rows of fabric representing years of service, sacrifice, choices that had led inexorably to this moment. Ma'am, Holden's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Whatever happens today, I want you to know the platoon has your back. Every single Marine here. We know who you are. We know what you've done. She met his eyes, saw the loyalty there, the fierce protectiveness of a young officer who still believed in honor and justice. I know, Lieutenant, that means more than you realize. Troops began arriving. 1,200 Marines in dress blues moving into formation with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had done this 100 times. The color guard took position. 8 Marines carrying flags that represented everything they had sworn to defend. Kira joined them, rifle at port arms, spine straight, eyes forward. The sun climbed, the bleachers filled, families, veterans, retired officers wearing their old uniforms with chests heavy with medals from forgotten wars. Men who had stormed beaches and fought in jungles and frozen on hillsides in Korea. At precisely 0745 hours, a black sedan arrived and the guest of honor emerged. Sergeant Major Edmund Calloway, 95 years old, thin as wire, back bent by nearly a century of living, but eyes still fierce with the fire that had carried him across the beaches of Iwo Jima 80 years ago. His Medal of Honor rested against his chest, that pale blue ribbon and bronze star that represented the absolute pinnacle of American military valor. He had charged a Japanese bunker alone, thrown in grenades, cleared the position with rifle and bayonet, and held it against counterattack for 4 hours while his platoon regrouped. 80 years later, his hands still trembled, but he walked without assistance, refused help, made it to his seat on the stage under his own power because that was who he was. This ceremony would honor him, recognize his sacrifice, remind a new generation what their great-grandfathers had endured. Kira felt something twist in her chest. This should be sacred, pure, a moment outside politics and personal grudges. At 0800 hours precisely, Admiral Victor Hartwell stepped onto the parade ground. He wore his dress white summer uniform, gold braid on the shoulders, rows of ribbons dominated by the distinctive red, white, and blue of the Navy Cross. 61 years old, but he moved with the rigid intensity of someone who had kept himself sharp through sheer force of will. Gray hair cropped tight, jaw like granite, eyes that scanned the assembled troops with predatory focus. Those eyes found Kira. Held. Something cold and satisfied flickered across his face, the look of a hunter who had finally cornered prey that had eluded him for far too long. The ceremony began. National anthem, invocation, speeches about duty and sacrifice, and the unbroken chain connecting today's warriors to the heroes of the past. Sergeant Major Calloway sat on the stage looking small and fragile, and somehow utterly immortal. Then Hartwell took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, active duty personnel, veterans, honored guests. His voice carried across the silent field with the authority of 30 years of command. Today we celebrate the extraordinary valor of Sergeant Major Edmund Calloway, a man who exemplifies everything this nation stands for. Courage, sacrifice, excellence under fire. He paused. Let the words settle. But we also remind ourselves that the standards Sergeant Major Calloway exemplified must be maintained. Excellence in combat requires more than just physical presence. It requires truth, integrity, the absolute certainty that those who wear this uniform have earned their place through genuine accomplishment. Kira's pulse spiked. She kept her face blank, rifle steady, but her knuckles whitened on the barrel. Recently, stories have surfaced about questionable combat achievements, claims of extraordinary marksmanship that strain credibility, records that upon closer examination appear inflated to advance certain agendas rather than reflect actual performance. He stepped down from the stage, began walking along the ranks, inspecting, judging, moving with calculated deliberation toward the color guard, toward Kira. We owe it to heroes like Sergeant Major Calloway to maintain absolute standards. No compromises, no exceptions, no stolen valor masquerading as legitimate service. He stopped directly in front of her. 1,200 pairs of eyes watched. Cameras recorded. This was the moment. The ambush Sergeant Major Creed had predicted. Hartwell's voice dropped to something just above a whisper. Meant only for her. Too quiet for microphones to capture. Too intimate for witnesses to hear. Your father died for nothing in Fallujah, a grunt on a rooftop playing hero. Just like my son died because women like you insisted on playing soldier in a world you don't belong in. The words hit like bullets, each one precisely aimed, each one designed to wound. But Kira had been trained for worse. She kept her eyes forward, face expressionless, breathing controlled, hold steady. Hartwell leaned closer. His breath smelled like coffee and rage. That shot you claim to have made, 1,847 yards. Impossible. Fabricated. I'm recommending a formal investigation into your entire service record. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to avoid prison for stolen valor. His hand moved, fast, open palm. The slap cracked across Kira's face like a rifle shot. The parade ground went absolutely silent. Time fractured. Kira staggered half a step the M1 Garand, nearly slipping from her grip. Her cheek burned where his palm had connected. Her vision blurred from the impact. Pain radiated through her skull like shrapnel. Somewhere in the stunned silence, someone gasped. A murmur rippled through the formation. Cameras kept recording, capturing everything, preserving this moment in digital immortality. 1,200 witnesses stood frozen, not believing what they had just seen. An admiral striking a subordinate officer, in public, in front of the world. Hartwell straightened his uniform, satisfied, triumphant. You're dismissed, Captain. Return to your quarters and await further instructions. You're relieved of... He raised his hand again, fist this time, closed and cocked and moving toward her face with clear intent to strike again. And something inside Kira Ashford broke free. Not rage, not emotion, not the hysterical female response Hartwell expected and wanted. Just the cold clarity her father had taught her, the same focus that had guided a bullet across 1,847 yards of Afghan air, the same discipline that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments and 47 kills. The fundamentals took over. Muscle memory honed through years of combatives training. Her body moved before her mind could second guess. Her left hand intercepted Hartwell's incoming fist, redirected the force past her shoulder. Her right hand came up, fast, precise, controlled. One strike, targeted at the jaw, calculated to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. The impact was clean, mathematical, perfect. Admiral Victor Hartwell's eyes rolled back in his skull. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the ceremonial grass like a fallen monument dressed whites against green unconscious before he hit the ground. His cover rolled free, tumbled across the parade ground in the sudden silence, coming to rest near the color guard like a crown stripped from a disgraced king. Kira stood over him, chest rising once with a deep breath. Settling. Her hands moved automatically to clasp behind her back. Parade rest position, the instinctive default of a Marine under stress. She looked at the stage, at Sergeant Major Calloway. The 95-year-old Medal of Honor recipient watched her with eyes that had seen Iwo Jima and understood something about the difference between orders and honor. She looked at Lieutenant Holden. His face showed shock and fear, and something that might have been pride. She looked at the 1,200 Marines who had just witnessed history fracture in real time, and she spoke, clearly, calmly, her voice carrying across the field with the precision she had used to call a shot at 1,847 yards. "I will accept the consequences." No one moved, no one spoke. The silence stretched across seconds that felt like hours. Then a Navy corpsman pushed through the frozen ranks, medical bag already open, dropping to his knees beside Hartwell's unconscious form. Fingers on his neck checking pulse, head tilted back checking airway. Breathing steady, pulse strong, concussion protocol. "I need a stretcher." Two more corpsmen materialized with a litter. They rolled Hartwell onto his back with practiced efficiency, secured his neck, lifted him as one unit. His head lolled. A thin line of blood traced from the corner of his mouth down to his collar. Kira watched them carry him away, hands still locked behind her back, face absolutely empty of expression. "Ma'am." Holden appeared at her elbow, voice low and urgent. "We need to move. Now. Before nothing, Lieutenant." The voice came from behind them. Hard. Official. A full commander in service dress pushed through the crowd, two master-at-arms following close behind. The MAAs had their hands near their sidearms, not quite touching, but ready. "Captain Ashford, you are hereby ordered to stand down and accompany these petty officers to the base JAG office for immediate questioning." Kira did not resist, did not argue. "Yes, sir." "Your credentials." She pulled her military ID from her breast pocket, handed it over with steady fingers. The commander took it like he was handling evidence at a crime scene, which she supposed he was. "Petty Officers Raines and Cooper, escort Captain Ashford to Building 7. Direct route, no stops, no conversations." He turned back to Kira. "Captain, you are advised that anything you say from this moment forward may be used in court-martial proceedings. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Do you wish to invoke your right to remain silent?" "No, sir. I will cooperate fully with the investigation." The commander nodded once. Sharp. "Take her." The two MAAs moved to flank her, not touching, not restraining, just present. The crowd parted as they walked. 1,200 Marines staring in stunned silence. Some faces showed shock. Others showed something harder to define. Not quite approval, but not condemnation either. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they had just witnessed something that would be whispered about in barracks and mess halls for the next 20 years. Kira kept her eyes forward, spine straight, breathing controlled. The parade ground fell away behind her. The ceremony interrupted and shattered, dissolved into chaos she could hear but not see. Officers shouting, families confused, press cameras swiveling to follow her retreating form like predators tracking wounded prey. Building 7 was a nondescript concrete structure that housed the base legal offices. The MAAs walked her inside down a corridor that smelled like old coffee and anxiety, into a small room with white walls, a metal table, 3 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. The red recording light blinked steadily. "Wait here, ma'am." The younger MAA, barely 23, tried to sound professional and mostly succeeded. "Someone will be with you shortly." The door closed, locked from outside with a heavy mechanical click. Kira sat in one of the chairs, placed her hands flat on the table, and waited. The room had no windows, no clock. Time became elastic, meaningless. She focused on her breathing. 4 counts in, hold. 4 counts out. The same rhythm she used before a long-range shot. For the first time in 21 years, Kira allowed herself to feel, truly feel. The tears came without warning. Not loud, not dramatic. Just silent streams tracking down her cheeks and dropping onto her folded hands. She cried for her father, for the man who had died on a rooftop in Fallujah, believing his daughter would have a better military than the one he had served. She cried for the 11-year-old girl who had made a promise she might not be able to keep. She cried because she was tired and scared and alone in a way that combat had never made her feel. And then she stopped, wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, began planning. Whatever came next, she would face it the way Gunnery Sergeant Dominic Ashford had taught her. With discipline, with honor, with absolute refusal to surrender ground that mattered. The door opened. A woman entered. Late 40s. Colonel's eagles on her collar. JAG insignia on her lapel. She carried a leather folder and moved with the controlled precision of someone who had spent decades navigating military bureaucracy. Her nameplate read, Stanton. Colonel Regina Stanton. She sat down across from Kira, opened the folder, studied its contents for a long moment before speaking. Captain Ashford, I'm Colonel Regina Stanton Bass, Staff Judge Advocate. I'm here to advise you of your rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice and to conduct a preliminary inquiry into the events that occurred approximately 93 minutes ago at the Medal of Honor ceremony. She pulled out a small recorder, set it on the table. This interview is being recorded. Do you consent? Yes, ma'am. State your name, rank, and service number for the record. Captain Kira Ashford, United States Marine Corps. Service number 5847392. Stanton made a note, looked up. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have counsel present during questioning. You have the right to request that this interview be terminated at any time. Do you understand these rights? Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to invoke any of these rights at this time? No, ma'am. I will answer your questions. Stanton leaned back, studied Kira with eyes that had probably seen every variation of human behavior the military could produce. Did you strike Admiral Victor Hartwell? Yes, ma'am. Can you describe the circumstances? Kira kept her voice level, factual, empty of emotion. She recounted the ceremony, Hartwell's speech, his approach to the color guard, the whispered accusations about her father, the slap, the raised fist. Stanton listened without interruption. When Kira finished, the colonel set down her pen. You claim self-defense. Yes, ma'am. Admiral Hartwell struck me once, then raised his hand to strike again. I responded with minimum necessary force. Captain Ashford, you rendered a flag officer unconscious with a single blow. The optics here are catastrophic. I understand that, ma'am. Stanton nodded slowly, closed her folder. Captain, I'm going to be direct with you. This situation is complicated in ways you probably don't fully appreciate yet. She leaned forward. What you don't know is that Admiral Hartwell has been on our radar for some time. Complaints, allegations, nothing concrete enough to pursue but patterns. Your case isn't occurring in a vacuum. She pulled out a tablet, queued up a video file. Body camera footage from Lieutenant Holden. He was standing approximately 15 feet from you when the incident occurred. His camera captured everything. She turned the tablet toward Kira, pressed play. The footage showed the parade ground from Holden's perspective, Hartwell approaching, the whispered words that the microphone had caught. Your father died for nothing in Fallujah. The slap, Kira's controlled reaction, no retaliation. Then Hartwell's fist rising, clear intent. Kira's defensive movement, the counterstrike. Hartwell dropping. Her voice on the recording, steady and clear, accepting responsibility without hesitation. The video ended. This footage establishes 2 attempted assaults by Admiral Hartwell, Stanton said quietly. It establishes that you did not initiate violence. It establishes that your response was controlled and proportionate. She paused. However, that's not why I'm showing you this. She pulled out her phone, queued up an audio file. This recording was obtained through a confidential informant embedded in Titan Defense Systems. NCIS has been building a case against Admiral Hartwell for 14 months. She pressed play. Voices emerged from the speaker, one immediately recognizable as Hartwell's. Need confirmation on the contract extension. Our board is getting nervous about the timeline. Hartwell, weary and irritated. I've already told you, the body armor contract will be approved. My signature carries weight, but I expect compensation. The payment structure we discussed remains in place. $4.2 million across 3 accounts. Make it 5, and I want guarantees that if any issues arise with the equipment, my name stays out of it. Understood. Our company takes full responsibility for product performance. A bitter laugh from Hartwell. Product performance. That's what you call armor that fails ballistics testing. A pause. 17 Marines have died wearing your defective vests in the last 8 months. I read the reports. Market conditions require certain cost compromises, Admiral. I don't care about your shareholders. Just make sure my deposit's clear on schedule. The recording ended. Kira felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Nearly 20 American service members. Dead. Because one man valued money over the lives of those he had sworn to protect. Families who had received folded flags and empty words about sacrifice and honor. Graves that should not exist. He knew, she whispered. He knew the armor was killing Marines, and he approved the contract anyway. Worse, Stanton's voice was ice. He profited from it. She gathered her materials. Admiral Hartwell will be arrested tomorrow morning. Formal charges under UCMJ Articles 92 and 133 plus multiple federal statutes. Financial fraud, acceptance of bribes, conspiracy to defraud the government. She met Kira's eyes. Captain Ashford, you didn't just defend yourself today. You accelerated the downfall of a man responsible for the deaths of American service members who trusted their equipment to protect them. The door closed. Kira sat alone in the white room. Processing. She thought about her father on that rooftop in Fallujah, holding ground, saving lives. She thought about Admiral Hartwell in that comfortable office, signing contracts, counting money while Marines died in armor he knew was defective. 2 men, 2 choices, 2 legacies. One died a hero, one would die a traitor. And somewhere between them, Kira Ashford had thrown a punch that might just change everything. She closed her eyes. For the first time since that 11-year-old girl had stood in a dark bedroom and made a promise to a ghost, the silence inside her felt like peace instead of emptiness. The battle was not over, but maybe she was finally winning. Bethesda Naval Hospital, 0630 hours. Admiral Victor Hartwell lay in his hospital bed, jaw wired shut, pride shattered, beyond any surgeon's ability to repair. The morning light filtered through sterile blinds, casting bars of shadow across his face like a preview of the prison bars to come. He was staring at the ceiling when the door opened. 4 men in dark suits entered, NCIS credentials visible on their belts, faces carved from stone. The kind of faces that delivered bad news without flinching. Behind them, 2 Navy JAG officers in dress uniforms. One carried handcuffs that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The other carried paperwork thick enough to end a career, a legacy, a life. Admiral Victor Hartwell. The lead agent's voice held no emotion, no satisfaction, just the cold professionalism of a man doing a job he had done many times before. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government, acceptance of bribes in violation of federal statute, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice Articles 92 and 133. Hartwell tried to speak. The wire jaw prevented anything but a strangled grunt of protest that died in his throat. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law and in military tribunal proceedings. They lifted him from the bed, hospital gown hanging loose on a frame that had once commanded respect, placed the handcuffs around his wrists. The metal clicked with the sound of finality, the sound of 30 years of service ending in disgrace. Outside the hospital, camera crews had gathered like vultures circling carrion. They had been tipped off. Someone wanted this moment captured. Someone wanted the world to see. Admiral Victor Hartwell, Navy Cross, recipient hero of the Persian Gulf, shuffled through the hospital doors in handcuffs and a medical gown. Flash bulbs exploded. Reporters shouted questions he could not answer even if he wanted to. The man who had destroyed careers, who had taken bribes while Marines died in defective armor, who had struck a subordinate officer in front of 1,200 witnesses. That man was led to a waiting vehicle and placed in the back seat like any common criminal. Justice moved slowly, but it moved, and sometimes it moved with cameras rolling. Kira did not see the arrest, but she heard about it from Major Preston Hale when he arrived at her BOQ room 90 minutes later. His expression carried the grim satisfaction of a lawyer who had just watched the opposition's case collapse in real time. The kind of satisfaction that came from seeing the system work the way it was supposed to work. Hartwell was taken into custody at Bethesda. 4 NCIS agents, 2 Navy JAG officers, media presence at every exit. Hale set down his briefcase, pulled out his tablet. It's already all over the news, every network, every website. Military Times has it as their lead story. He turned the tablet toward her. The headline filled the screen in bold letters: Decorated Admiral arrested on corruption charges. Below it, a photograph of Hartwell being led from the hospital in handcuffs. His dress whites replaced by a hospital gown. His face pale with shock. His eyes carrying the hollow look of a man watching his entire world collapse around him. Your name is in every article, Captain, as the officer who struck him, as the whistleblower who first reported his activities 2 years ago. Hale scrolled through the coverage. You're famous now, whether you wanted to be or not. Kira stared at the photograph, at the man who had destroyed her career, who had insulted her father's memory, who had taken bribes while American soldiers died in defective armor. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a hollow emptiness where rage should have been. I didn't want to be famous, she said quietly. I wanted to do my job. Well, you're going to have to accept a certain amount of visibility now. The narrative has shifted dramatically. Hale closed the tablet. Yesterday, you were a violent subordinate who assaulted a superior officer. Today, you're the Marine who stood up to corruption and paid the price for it. He pulled out a folder thick with documents. Public opinion is swinging hard in your favor. There's a petition online calling for all charges against you to be dropped. It has 200,000 signatures and counting. Veterans groups are issuing statements of support. 3 congressmen have called for an investigation into Hartwell's activities going back a decade. Public opinion doesn't determine military justice. No, Hale agreed, but it creates pressure. Political pressure, the kind that makes generals nervous and politicians pay attention. He met her eyes. Captain, I'm going to be direct. The prosecution is in a very difficult position. They're still moving forward with your Article 32 hearing because regulations require it, but their case is evaporating by the hour. Body camera footage supports self-defense. Witness statements corroborate your version of events. And now Hartwell is facing decades in prison for corruption that directly contradicts his credibility as a witness against you. So you think the charges will be dropped? I think the hearing will proceed. We'll present our evidence. The investigating officer will make a recommendation. Hale paused. Nothing is guaranteed. Military justice has its own momentum, but our position is strong, very strong. He reached back into his briefcase, pulled out another document. There's something else. We've received over 300 offers of character witness testimony. Marines you've served with, officers who've observed your leadership, instructors from your training schools. He handed her a single sheet of paper. This one came in an hour ago. I thought you should see it personally. Kira took the paper, read the letterhead. Office of Sergeant Major Edmund Calloway, USMC retired. Medal of Honor, Iwo Jima, 1945. Her breath caught in her throat. She read the statement slowly, each word carrying the weight of 95 years of life and 80 years of reflection on what honor truly meant. I stormed the beaches of Iwo Jima with men who understood that rank without honor is tyranny. We followed officers who earned our respect through courage, not through stars on their collars. We obeyed orders because those orders came from men who would die beside us, not men who would sacrifice us for their own gain. I witnessed the events at Norfolk Naval Station. I saw Admiral Hartwell strike a subordinate officer without provocation. I saw that officer absorb the blow without retaliation, maintaining her discipline despite the assault. I saw the Admiral raise his hand to strike again with clear, violent intent. And I saw Captain Ashford defend herself with controlled force and immediate accountability. In my 95 years, I have learned that courage takes many forms. Sometimes it is charging a machine gun nest. Sometimes it is standing your ground when a powerful man tries to break you. Captain Ashford showed courage of the highest order. She defended her dignity the way a Marine should, with minimum necessary force, with instant acceptance of consequences, with the discipline that separates warriors from brawlers. If defending yourself against assault is a crime, then we have lost our way as a military and as a nation. I stake my name and my honor on the character of Captain Kira Ashford. She is exactly the kind of Marine this country needs. and she is exactly the kind of Marine her father would be proud of. The signature at the bottom was shaky but clear. Edmund Calloway. Below it, a note in different handwriting dictated to and witnessed by Mrs. Patricia Calloway. Kira set down the paper. Her hands were trembling. A 95-year-old Medal of Honor recipient. A man who had stormed beaches under machine gun fire. A man who had held a position against waves of enemy soldiers for 4 hours with nothing but a rifle and his refusal to die. A living legend whose name was spoken with reverence in every branch of the military, standing up for her. He didn't have to do this, she said quietly. No, he didn't. Hale's voice was gentle, but he wanted to. His aide said he dictated that statement the moment he got home from the ceremony, said he'd seen too many good soldiers destroyed by bad officers over the years, said he wasn't going to let it happen again if he could help it. Kira carefully folded the paper, placed it in her pocket, close to her heart. When is the hearing? Tomorrow, 0900 hours, Building 7, Conference Room A. Hale stood. Get some rest tonight, Captain. Tomorrow's going to be long, but I think it's going to end well. The hearing convened at 0900 hours precisely. Conference Room A had been converted into a makeshift courtroom. Long tables faced each other, a raised desk at the front for the investigating officer. Chairs along the walls for observers packed so tightly that some had to stand. The room was full beyond capacity. Marines in uniform filled every seat. Civilian lawyers clustered near the prosecution table. A handful of media representatives who had been granted limited access sat in the back row, notebooks, ready recording devices visible. Every eye tracked Kira as she entered and took her seat beside Major Hale. The investigating officer was a colonel named Bryce Kellerman, late 50s, combat infantry background with 3 tours in Iraq. Reputation for being scrupulously fair and impossible to intimidate. His service record included a Silver Star for valor under fire. He reviewed the case file for a long moment, then looked up. This Article 32 hearing is convened to investigate charges against Captain Kira Ashford, United States Marine Corps, under Article 128 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, assault on a superior commissioned officer. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Captain Ashford, you have been advised of your rights. Do you understand the nature of these proceedings? Yes, sir. Major Hale, you represent the accused. Yes, sir. Commander Walsh, you represent the government. The prosecutor stood, mid-40s, JAG career officer, wearing the tight expression of someone who knew his case was weak, but had to proceed anyway because regulations demanded it. Yes, sir. Then let's begin. Commander Walsh, present your case. Walsh laid out the government's position with clinical efficiency. Captain Ashford had struck Admiral Hartwell, rendered him unconscious. Regardless of provocation, the action constituted assault on a superior officer. The physical disparity between a trained combatant and a 61-year-old admiral made the force used excessive. Court-martial was warranted to address this violation of military order and discipline. It was a competent argument, legally sound if you ignored context. Then Hale stood. Sir, the defense does not dispute that Captain Ashford struck Admiral Hartwell. What we dispute is the characterization of that action as assault rather than lawful self-defense. He clicked a remote. The large monitor at the front of the room flickered to life. Article 128 explicitly allows for defensive force to prevent imminent bodily harm. We will demonstrate through video evidence, witness testimony, and Captain Ashford's own account that she faced 2 separate assault attempts by Admiral Hartwell and responded with the minimum force necessary to neutralize an immediate threat. The body camera footage played, every detail captured in high definition. Hartwell's approach, the verbal assault, the whispered accusations that the microphone had caught despite Hartwell's attempts at discretion. Your father died for nothing in Fallujah. Several observers winced at those words. Then the slap, the crack of impact making people flinch even though they knew it was coming. Kira's controlled reaction, no retaliation, perfect discipline. Then the crucial moment. Hartwell raising his fist, clear intent, undeniable threat. Kira's defensive movement, intercepted strike, controlled counter, Hartwell dropping, her voice on the recording steady and clear, accepting responsibility without hesitation. The video ended. Silence filled the room. Hale let it hang for a moment, then spoke. This footage documents 2 attempted assaults by a superior officer against a subordinate. It documents restraint and discipline from Captain Ashford in the face of the first assault. It documents a textbook example of proportionate defensive force in response to the second. The government's case requires us to ignore what we can all clearly see. Kellerman leaned forward. Commander Walsh response. Walsh stood, clearly uncomfortable. Sir, while the video does show Admiral Hartwell initiating contact, the question remains whether Captain Ashford faced genuine threat requiring physical response. A 61-year-old officer poses limited danger to a combat-trained Marine. She could have let him hit her again. Hale's voice cut like a blade. That's the government's argument, that Captain Ashford should have allowed continued assault because her attacker held superior rank. He turned to Kellerman. Sir, with respect, that's not justice. That's institutional endorsement of abuse. Kellerman made notes. His face revealed nothing. I want to hear from witnesses. For the next 2 hours, Marines testified. Lieutenant Holden described what he had seen. Sergeant Major Creed spoke about Kira's character, her father's legacy, and the pattern of harassment from Hartwell over years. Then Master Gunnery Sergeant Thatcher took the stand. Chief Instructor Scout Sniper School. 22 years training the best marksmen in the Marine Corps. The 1,847-yard shot has been verified through drone footage, ballistics analysis, and enemy communications intercepts. That shot is one of the most difficult pieces of marksmanship I've ever seen documented. He looked at Kellerman directly. If Captain Ashford wanted to cause serious injury to Admiral Hartwell, she had the training and opportunity. She chose not to. She chose minimum necessary force. That's not assault. That's perfect discipline under extreme duress. Finally, Kellerman called Kira to the witness chair. She raised her right hand, swore the oath, sat down. Captain Ashford, in your own words, describe what happened. Kira recounted the events, Hartwell's approach, the accusations about stolen valor, the whispered attack on her father's memory, the slap, the raised fist. I had 3 options, sir. Stand there and take the hit, retreat and abandon my post, or defend myself with minimum necessary force. She met Kellerman's eyes. I chose defense. 1 strike, controlled, then immediate surrender to authority. Walsh stood for cross-examination. You had motivation for revenge. Hartwell had ruined your career. Sir, if I wanted revenge, I would have taken it 2 years ago. I struck him because he was attacking me and showed clear intent to continue. My motivation was survival, not vengeance. But surely you felt satisfaction? No, sir. Kira's voice was soft but certain. I felt regret. Admiral Hartwell was a hero once. Watching him fall brought me no joy. The answer deflated Walsh's momentum completely. Kellerman dismissed Kira back to her seat. I've heard sufficient testimony. This hearing is concluded. I will submit my recommendation within 72 hours. The gavel fell. The recommendation came exactly 72 hours later. Major Hale delivered it personally. His expression told everything before he spoke a single word. All charges dropped. Kira felt the words hit her like a physical force. Colonel Kellerman found clear evidence of self-defense. The convening authority concurred. Hale paused. But there's more. He pulled an envelope from his briefcase. This came through official channels this morning, from Headquarters Marine Corps. Kira opened the envelope, pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. It was a promotion order. Effective immediately, Captain Kira Ashford was promoted to the rank of Major United States Marine Corps. The citation read, for exceptional leadership under adverse conditions and unwavering commitment to the highest standards of honor and integrity. She stared at the paper. They're promoting me. You exposed a corrupt admiral responsible for American deaths. You maintained discipline under assault. You accepted consequences rather than making excuses. Hale's voice was warm. That's exactly the kind of officer the Marine Corps wants to promote. Sergeant Major Creed met her outside the Scout Sniper compound. He came to attention, rendered a salute so sharp it could have drawn blood. Welcome home, Major. Kira returned the salute. Good to be home, Sergeant Major. Your father would have been proud. A figure appeared at the compound gate. Civilian clothes, VFW cap, jacket covered in patches from units and conflicts spanning decades. Wallace Taggart, 72 years old. Mogadishu veteran. Major Ashford. He removed his cap. I served with your father. I was in the convoy he saved. I haven't seen you since you were a little girl at his funeral. Kira's heart rate increased. Sir, I came because of what I saw on television, and I thought you should know something about your father. He took a breath. The night before Dominic died, we were on rooftop duty together. I asked him what scared him most about being a parent. His eyes grew distant. He said the thing that scared him most was that someday you would face a choice between doing what was right and doing what was safe, and he wouldn't be there to tell you which to pick. Taggart's voice dropped. I told him not to worry, told him you'd figure it out, and he said, yeah, she will, because I'm teaching her now. Every time we go to the range, every time I show her how to hold the rifle, hold steady, breathe, squeeze. He met her eyes. He said those words weren't just about shooting, they were about life. Hold steady means keep your position when everything around you is chaos. Breathe means control yourself when fear is screaming at you to panic. Squeeze means act with precision when the moment comes. Tears rolled down Kira's cheeks. She did not wipe them away. What you did at Norfolk, standing there, taking that slap, not retaliating, then defending yourself when you had to, then accepting consequences. Taggart squeezed her hand. That was your father's teaching in action, every single second of it. He saluted, old school, crisp. He'd be proud of you, Major, real proud. Then he walked away. Arlington National Cemetery. That evening, Kira walked the familiar path through rows of white marble headstones, past Section 60 where the recent fallen rested, to the older sections where warriors from earlier wars slept beneath American soil. She found her father's grave easily, had been here hundreds of times over 21 years. The headstone was simple. Name, rank, dates. The Marine Corps emblem carved into white marble. Kira knelt in the grass, pulled a folded letter from her pocket, placed it against the base of the headstone. Mission accomplished, Dad. Her voice was steady, clear. Hartwell was arrested. The families will get answers about why their sons and daughters didn't come home. The armor that killed them, the corruption that allowed it, it's all coming out now. She touched the cold marble. I got promoted. Major now. Your little girl who couldn't hold the rifle steady when she was 8. Tears fell freely. I kept my promise, the one I made that night after they brought the flag. I finished what you started. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I stood my ground. She pressed her palm flat against the headstone. Hold steady. Breathe. Squeeze. You taught me well, Dad. Better than you probably ever knew. She stood, rendered a final salute. Semper Fi, Dad. Until we meet again. Somewhere in the distance, a bugler played taps. Kira listened until the last note faded. Then she walked back to her car. Back to duty. Back to the mission that never ended. 6 months later. Raqqa, Syria. Major Kira Ashford lay prone on a rooftop overlooking a shattered city. The building beneath her had been an apartment complex once. Now it was rubble and rebar, but the walls still stood high enough to provide cover. Beside her, Corporal Beckett Shaw peered through his spotting scope, 19 years old, fresh from sniper school, nervous on his first real deployment. Convoy approaching from the north, ma'am. 11 vehicles. Kira adjusted her scope, scanned the buildings. Contact, building at 2 o'clock. 3rd floor, hostile with an RPG. She found him, a figure in black rocket launcher aimed at the road below. Range 900 yards, wind 6 miles per hour. Shaw's voice tightened. Civilians in adjacent buildings. Shaw looked at her, face pale. Ma'am, what if I miss? What if I do the math right and still miss? Kira remembered asking a similar question 24 years ago. Then you breathe. You recalculate. You try again. Missing isn't failure, Corporal. Refusing to shoot because you're afraid of missing. That's failure. She settled behind her rifle. The fundamentals took over. The same sequence she had performed 1,000 times. The same discipline her father had drilled into her bones. One breath. One squeeze. One bullet crossing 900 yards of Syrian air. Clean. Precise. Final. The target dropped. The RPG fell unfired. The convoy rolled through safely. Shaw stared at her. How do you stay so calm? Kira chambered another round, returned her eye to the scope. My father taught me, and now you're teaching me. That's how it works, Corporal. That's how the legacy continues. One generation passes knowledge to the next. The chain never breaks. Shaw straightened, something settling in his eyes. Yes, ma'am. The night fell slowly over Raqqa. Kira pulled out her notebook, made her entry by dim red light. Syria deployment day 47. Successful overwatch. Convoy protected. Target neutralized at 900 yards. Corporal Shaw is learning fast. Reminds me of myself at his age. Dad's fundamentals continue to work. Hold steady. Breathe. Squeeze. The mission continues. Always. She closed the notebook, looked up at the stars, the same stars that had watched over her father in Fallujah, the same stars that had witnessed her impossible shot in Helmand, the same stars that had seen an 11-year-old girl make a promise in a dark bedroom. 2 generations, 2 rooftops, 2 wars, 1 legacy. Kira smiled in the darkness. I finished what you started, Dad, and now I'm starting something new, something that will last long after I'm gone. She returned her eye to the scope. The mission continued. It always would, because that was what Marines did. They held the line. They protected their own. They passed the torch to those who came after, and they never surrendered ground that mattered.